The streaming giant Spotify has conquered the music industry. Many of those responsible for the music on the platform, the artists themselves, say they're getting a raw deal.
Spotify debuts today on the New York Stock Exchange. This is a music streaming service.
Prior to Spotify, the music industry was collapsing. CD sales were plummeting, piracy was out of control, and artists didn't know how they'd survive. But in 2008, a startup from Sweden launched with one bold mission: make music free, but legally. What began as a risky experiment turned into a global phenomenon that would forever change how we listen, share, and value music. This is the story of how Spotify changed the music industry forever. Before Spotify, music was something you owned. You bought albums on CDs, burned your own mixes, and carefully organized tracks in MP3 folders. There were no playlists on demand, no instant sharing, and certainly no streaming. Listening to music was a commitment, one that required time, money, and effort. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, compact discs ruled the world. CDs were the industry's golden goose, cheap to produce, sold for $15 to $20 each, and packed with profits. But they had one big problem. Consumers had to buy the entire album, even if they only wanted one song. Meanwhile, the average listener was evolving. Enter the MP3 player. First, with devices like the Diamond Rio and eventually the iconic iPod, suddenly you could carry 1,000 songs in your pocket. But ripping those songs from CDs or downloading them from shady websites became the new norm. And then came the tidal wave: piracy. In 1999, a college student named Sean Fanning launched Napster, a peer-to-peer file sharing service. It let users download virtually any song for free in seconds. Napster exploded to over 80 million users in just a few years. The music industry completely blindsided. Soon, dozens of piracy platforms followed: Kazaa, LimeWire, BearShare, BitTorrent, each faster and harder to shut down than the last. Teenagers were filling their iPods with music they never paid for. It was a digital Wild West, and record labels were losing billions. In 1999, the global music industry was worth over $23 billion. By 2010, that number had fallen to just $14 billion, a loss of nearly 40% in a single decade. The RIAA launched aggressive legal battles, even suing individual users, some of them teenagers, for thousands of dollars. But the truth was simple. People weren't stealing music because they wanted to break the law. They were stealing it because it was easier. Apple's iTunes Store, launched in 2003, tried to bring order to the chaos. It offered legal downloads for 99 cents per song. It was revolutionary, but still required you to buy every track and manage your own digital library. This model worked, temporarily, but consumers had gotten a taste of something bigger. Unlimited music, instant access, no ownership, no hassle. They didn't want to buy songs. They wanted to press play and listen to anything, just like they could on Napster, but legally. And that's when Spotify entered the conversation. The year was 2006. The music industry was in crisis, piracy was rampant, and no one had found a viable solution to fix it. In the heart of Stockholm, Sweden, a small group of visionaries was quietly working on an idea that would soon shake the entire foundation of global music distribution. At the center of this story is Daniel Ek, a brilliant self-taught programmer and tech prodigy. By age 14, Ek was already building websites for businesses. By 18, he was earning more money than most adults, running a web hosting company out of his bedroom. After a brief stint as the CTO of the peer-to-peer software company uTorrent, Ek had seen firsthand how easily digital files could be shared across the internet, and he realized something profound. Piracy wasn't a moral failure, it was a user experience problem. People pirated music because it was faster, easier, and more convenient than the legal alternatives. So what if you could make a platform that was even better than piracy? One that offered instant access, was completely legal, and gave artists a share of the revenue. That was the seed of Spotify. To bring this vision to life, Ek teamed up with Martin Lorentzon, a seasoned Swedish entrepreneur and investor. Lorentzon had co-founded Trade Doubler, one of Europe's most successful digital marketing companies at the time. In fact, he and Eck had first crossed paths when Trade Doubler acquired one of Eck's earlier ventures. Though Lorentzon was nearly a decade older, the two had instant chemistry. Daniel brought the technical brilliance, Martin brought the business experience, and more importantly, the capital. Together, they founded Spotify AB in April 2006. The name Spotify came about by accident. One of them misheard the other while brainstorming names. Later, they jokingly claimed it was a combination of spot and identify. Either way, the name stuck. Early development wasn't easy. The platform had to deliver music instantly, without buffering or lag. So Eck built a proprietary P2P, peer-to-peer architecture, similar to how torrents work, but optimized for real-time playback. This technical innovation allowed Spotify to stream music with virtually no delay, an experience far superior to anything else at the time. But the real challenge was getting the music itself. Convincing major record labels like Universal, Sony, Warner, and EMI to license their catalogs was like trying to tame lions with a handshake. The industry was still paranoid from the Napster era, and here was another tech guy promising to fix everything. X spent 2 full years in closed-door meetings with label executives, building trust and negotiating terms. Spotify even offered equity stakes to the labels in exchange for licensing rights, something almost unheard of at the time. By October 2008, Spotify finally launched in Sweden, the UK, and a few other European countries by invite only. It was sleek, fast, and felt like magic. You typed in a song and it played instantly. Spotify had arrived. Spotify's early launch was quiet but electric. The product worked. People loved it. Word spread fast. But building a successful streaming platform wasn't just about good tech. It was about scale, funding, and strategy. And that's where Spotify truly began to rise. Between 2008 and 2010, Spotify focused on dominating the European market. The company operated under a freemium model. Users could stream music for free with ads, or upgrade to Spotify Premium for a monthly fee and enjoy ad-free, offline listening. This model did 2 things. It made piracy unnecessary. It generated consistent recurring revenue, something investors loved. To support its expansion, Spotify raised funding from top-tier VCs like Northzone, DST Global, and Technology Crossover Ventures. By 2011, they had raised over $100 million. But the biggest prize was the US market, home to the world's most powerful labels and the largest pool of potential users. Getting there wouldn't be easy. Spotify had to renegotiate licensing deals, deal with skeptical American record execs, and promise payouts large enough to calm label fears. It took years. But in July 2011, Spotify officially launched in the US. The American rollout was a turning point. Spotify partnered with Facebook to allow social sharing of playlists and listening activity. Mark Zuckerberg even called Spotify the model of how music should work in the future. This strategic integration drove millions of signups. By the end of 2012, Spotify had over 20 million users, with nearly 5 million paying subscribers. But not everything went smoothly. Behind the scenes, Spotify was bleeding money. Licensing fees were massive. The company often spent more on royalties than it brought in from subscriptions and ads. Critics questioned if the business model was even sustainable. Meanwhile, artists began raising concerns. Spotify's per-stream payout, often a fraction of a penny, sparked backlash. Major acts like Taylor Swift, Adele, and Thom Yorke pulled their music or spoke out against the platform. Still, Spotify pressed forward. They invested in personalized experiences like Discover Weekly, powered by machine learning, and editorially curated playlists like Rap Caviar and Hot Country. These became tastemakers in their own right, shaping what people listened to and what became popular. Spotify wasn't just a platform anymore. It was a power broker in the music world. By 2015, Spotify was the world's largest streaming service. They had users in over 50 countries and were paying out billions annually to rights holders. And in 2018, Spotify went public, not through a traditional IPO, but a bold direct listing on the New York Stock Exchange. It was a move that symbolized their renegade DNA. No middlemen, no bankers, just Spotify and the market. With that, the Swedish startup that began as a desperate attempt to fight piracy had officially become a global tech giant. But the story was far from over. Spotify didn't just disrupt how we listen to music, it rewrote the rules of how music is made, shared, and sold. Before streaming, success in the music industry was a top-down system. A small circle of executives decided what songs got airplay, which artists were promoted, and how albums were distributed. Labels acted as gatekeepers, but Spotify flipped that script. Now, the power began shifting from the boardroom to the bedroom studio. The rise of Spotify coincided with the rise of independent artists and DIY culture. With platforms like DistroKid, TuneCore, and CD Baby, musicians no longer needed a record deal to release music. Spotify gave these artists a platform that offered global distribution and data. You could release a track, get real-time analytics, see who's listening, and grow a fan base without ever signing away your rights. Genres once considered niche suddenly found millions of fans. Lo-fi beats, underground hip-hop, global funk, indie bedroom pop, all fueled by playlists and algorithms rather than radio stations and label budgets. And while access was democratized, the album itself began to fade. With streaming, singles reigned supreme. Why make a 12-track record when one viral song could explode your career? Artists began releasing music more frequently, catering to streaming algorithms that rewarded consistency and engagement over long-term, polished projects. Meanwhile, record labels had to adapt fast. They shifted from selling music to monetizing streams, becoming more data-driven in how they signed and marketed talent. The relationship between artists and labels evolved. Labels offered distribution muscle, but Spotify offered visibility and a more level playing field. In short, Spotify didn't just change the music business, it created a new one. With Spotify leading the charge, streaming didn't just become a trend, it became the new standard. Today, most listeners don't own their music, they access it. Streaming is fast, affordable, and personalized, and Spotify has made sure of that. One of the platform's most powerful innovations? Personalized listening experiences. Spotify uses advanced machine learning algorithms to study what you listen to, how long you listen, what you skip, when you pause, and even where you are. Then it builds curated playlists like Discover Weekly, Daily Mix, and Release Radar, all customized to your taste. This personalization goes far beyond genre. Spotify can detect if you're working out, relaxing, or studying, and tailor music to match your mood or behavior. This has transformed how people consume music, from passive listening to contextual listening. And playlists? They've become king. Editorially curated lists like Rap Caviar, Pollen, or R&B wield enormous influence. Being placed on the right playlist can turn an unknown artist into an overnight sensation. But it's not just human editors anymore. AI is taking over. Spotify uses artificial intelligence to automate curation, build synthetic playlists, and even analyze the DNA of sound, breaking tracks down by tempo, key, energy, and emotion. And now the industry faces a wild new frontier: AI-generated music. Startups and tools powered by OpenAI, Google's Music LM, and others are already producing entire instrumental tracks and even vocals. Spotify has started experimenting with AI DJ features, and it's only a matter of time before AI becomes part of the production process too. In the world Spotify helped build, music isn't just about talent or industry, it's about data, access, and adaptability. The future of music is no longer in the hands of a few producers, it's in the pockets of everyone with a phone. For all its innovation and success, Spotify has faced ongoing criticism, especially when it comes to how artists are compensated. Spotify pays artists a fraction of a penny per stream, roughly 0.03 to 0.05 of a cent. That means a song needs over 250,000 streams to earn just $1,000. And most of that money goes to the rights holders, usually the label, not the artists themselves. This payment model has sparked outrage from musicians around the world. In 2014, Taylor Swift made headlines by removing her entire catalog from Spotify, accusing the platform of devaluing music. Radiohead frontman Tom York called Spotify the last desperate fart of a dying corpse. Others followed suit or demanded reform. Spotify, for its part, argued that streaming wasn't the problem, piracy was. They believed it was better to pay artists something than to have their work stolen for free. Still, the company introduced tools like Spotify for Artists to offer transparency, analytics, and limited promotional features. But for many independent creators, the revenue still doesn't add up. Beyond royalties, Spotify has been accused of shaping music discovery in a way that narrows diversity rather than expanding it. Its recommendation engine tends to push familiar, algorithm-friendly sounds, leading to what some call playlist homogenization. And then there's an issue of fake artists. Reports have surfaced of Spotify allegedly creating or promoting generic-sounding tracks under pseudonyms to reduce payout costs. Spotify has denied wrongdoing, but the accusations raised major questions about transparency. Ethically, the role of streaming platforms is murky. Are they neutral distributors or invisible gatekeepers? Should they prioritize profit or the cultural health of music? These questions will only grow louder as the industry becomes more automated, data-driven, and AI-influenced. Spotify may have saved the music industry from piracy, but now it faces a new challenge, proving it can support the people who make the music too.